Hey everyone, for this week's episode, we wanted to give you a warning up front. Towards the end of recording, about an hour and a half in, we lost the files, the recordings. We had a technical difficulty, and rather than re-record the whole conversation and lose the spontaneity of our initial conversation, we opted to use our backup Skype recording, so the audio quality will not be what you're used to hearing, and we apologize, but nevertheless, here you go. Here's our episode on Come and See.
Hey guys, in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Come and See. But before that, we're going to talk about A Quiet Place Part 2 and Air Force One. So, get off our plane.
Get on our plane. If our plane is the episode, right? Listen to the episode.
Yeah. I was just trying to be Air Force One themed. Anyways, join us.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinks. My name is Justin, and with me, as always, is a man who I'm guessing is not that hyped about enlisting in the Army and going off to war. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You're right about that, but to be fair, I don't think I ever was, even before this movie. So,
I think I might have been when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and you don't really know better. You just play like war video games and watch Arnold Schwarzenegger Commando movie.
Yeah, I saw Saving Private Ryan pretty early, though. I think I was 10 years old when that movie came out.
Yeah, that would do it too. I don't know if I saw that until much later in life.
Yeah, well, it thoroughly cleansed me of any romanticizing war.
Yeah, fair.
But anyways, if this is your first time listening, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is a Criterion Collection-focused episode that we like to do every other week, where we review a film from the Criterion Collection that is voted on by the listeners. But before we get into the main review, we will be doing our usual News on the March section, where we talk about recent news and things that we have been watching. So if you have not seen the film, the main event, you can still listen, and then we will move into the Casually Criterion review for Come and See, spine number 1035. It'll all be time-stamped for you.
That's right. And like Mike said, we put a poll out for our listeners to vote on the Criterion films that we're going to be discussing on every Casually Criterion episode. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. We put the poll out on our Twitter account, so that's the best place to follow us. Also, if you want to send us any messages, ask us any questions, suggest any movies that we cover, send us a message to any of those social media accounts, or email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, you want to help other people find it and make us feel good inside, go onto iTunes or whatever platform you listen to podcasts on and give us a 5-star review and say some nice words about us.
Yeah, please and thank you.
You're welcome. I already did it. I reviewed our own show.
Me too. I did too. Shameless plug for our own reviews. Anyways, all right. Are we ready to get into News on the March?
Yes, I am.
Let's do this thing.
News on the March!
All right, Justin. So on the show notes here, I see a classic that you have recently watched. This is a film that I saw in theaters whenever I was a little boy in the single screen theater in our small hometown.
Oh, I remember that thing. That's where I saw Phantom Menace and The Waterboy and
The Mummy.
Yeah, Titanic.
Anyways, so Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about this film, what it is, and what you thought of it? I am dying to know, because you told me moments before we started recording that this was your first time seeing this film.
That's very true. It's my first time seeing it. It's one I've been meaning to see forever. I'm a fan of, the lead actor in it, and for lots of films that he's in, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, even his serialized movies, I think, are generally pretty good and enjoyable. And of course, I'm talking about Harrison Ford. And the film that I had never seen for some reason was Air Force One.
Yeah. Now, this blows my mind. I didn't think that anyone who was alive in 1998 didn't see
Yeah,
this film. I assume it's 98. That sounds right. Feels right.
97.
97. Okay.
That's
I was
close.
close.
Yeah, but I had never seen this one, and yeah, I guess it just evaded me forever. But of course, I was very familiar with it. I saw clips of it. I saw trailers of it. You know, I'm pretty sure this was nominated for Best Fight at the MTV Movie Awards, which I did watch in the 90s when I was young.
Prestigious honor.
Yeah, so I've seen, you know, clips of a lot of this movie from that sort of thing. So it's
Yeah.
a film I guess I felt like I've seen. So sometimes those kind of fall off your priority list, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my wife and I recently finished watching through the Star Wars films, and we had watched The Fugitive a couple months before that, and she's been on a big Harrison Ford bender and been crushing on him hard. Even current Harrison Ford, she'll see a photo of him and say, "Wow, that guy's handsome."
Well, sidebar. As we're recording this, the past couple days, Indiana Jones 5 set pictures have been leaking.
I've seen those,
Yeah.
and that's very exciting. It's fun to see him in the get up.
Yeah. No Spielberg this time, but I believe it's who is it? James Mangold directing it, or
Oh,
someone like that. One of those
I would,
guys.
I would be on board for James Mangold directing it. As
Yeah, it's
someone who
I
has no
don't
idea.
know if it's James Mangold. It may be. It's someone that it makes sense. They're a good handoff. But yeah, apparently even more of a sidebar. There's been a like a stunt driver riding around on a motorcycle wearing a Harrison Ford mask, like a young Harrison Ford mask. So at least part of this adventure is going to have a young Indy in it. So that's cool.
Yeah, it sounds a little creepy, but
I'm sure
cool
it'll
enough,
look
I
good in the
guess.
movie.
Yeah, probably. And you are right; it is James Mangold.
Sweet.
But I'm also excited because Mads Mikkelsen is in it, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge from Fleabag.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It is. But you know what else is exciting? Air Force One.
Yeah,
What a
let's bring
movie.
it back around. So go into your thoughts on Air Force One.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say about this movie? It's a 90s Harrison Ford action thriller, and it certainly lives up to the thriller hype. And you know, it has Gary Oldman in it
Yep.
playing
Chewing some scenery.
playing a foreign character, a bad guy, extremely well, as he tends to do, and he did a lot of in the 90s. And I think the thing that I will say is, I think maybe I've had a lot of the sort of like watered down action hero movies over the last like decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, starting with things like Liam Neeson and Taken, which, you know, nothing against the movie. I just feel it's a little like watered down.
Yeah.
So
I would argue it started somewhere in the Bourne trilogy.
probably I did watch The Bourne Identity again for the first time in a while, and that's pretty good, but it is watered down, especially in comparison to Air Force One.
It's very PG-13.
Yeah. Yes, that is what I mean by watered down too, I think. But I was impressed by this movie, just the sheer amount of like in your face, the gritty violence, and the way that Gary Oldman's bad guy operates, and like the amount of people that he kills and the amount of people that die in it. I guess I'm kind of used to like seeing people get like hit and then they fall down.
Right.
But a lot of people die in this movie. A lot of people get like shot like point blank. And it was just kind of a nice, you know, punch in the face for an action film, to watch an action film that's not so watered down.
Well, that's the 90s, man. In your face.
Yeah. So from that level, I really enjoyed it. Of course, Harrison Ford as president is a dream, especially coming out of the last 4 years or so.
Yeah.
He just seems extra cool.
He's probably him in that movie is probably cooler than any president we've ever had.
Oh yeah. Maybe the last 100 years or so in comparison to all of them. He's pretty sweet. But yeah, I'm glad that I watched it. I think it's a super fun movie, and I think that
Is it
holds
campy?
up.
I remember a certain amount of fun camp to it.
There's a little bit of camp that I think comes from some of the side characters in the plane. Like, there's a couple characters that have some like comic relief sort of moments and are a little silly. But Harrison Ford is definitely not acting in a campy movie, you know? And I guess you could argue if that Gary Oldman is campy, just being so over the top.
But that's Gary Oldman. That's like the
Yeah.
essence of Gary Oldman in any movie, even the ones where he's great.
Yeah.
Like, I think Gary Oldman thrives a little bit on camp, I think.
Yeah. When you get to like all the stuff that's taking place at the White House, I think it's Glenn Close.
Oh yeah, Glenn Close is
in
the
it.
vice president, right?
Yeah. And all of the stuff that's going on there, not very campy, definitely very, I don't know, political, and all the mechanisms they have to go through to do certain things. And it's very serious. So,
Right. I guess what I'm thinking of is like Get Off My Plane. Is there a lot of like catchphrases and stuff in it, or is that kind of it? Is that like
I
the
think that's
campiest
it. I think they spent all their money on the screenwriter who wrote that line and didn't pay him to write any other
Yeah.
one-liners.
Yeah. That's okay because it crescendos at the end there very nicely. Spoilers for that,
It's great.
20-year-old movie, 30-year-old movie.
Yeah, and that's like the moment that I've seen the most, right? And maybe that's why I felt like I've seen this movie before, because that's the moment, right?
Yeah.
And I knew it was coming.
Yeah. When you started the movie, you knew you were on a path to get there somewhere.
Yeah, he's gonna kick somebody off this plane. I don't know what they're doing,
And
what they did.
exclaim that they need to get off his plane before he does it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do remember, again, spoilers for this really old movie in the end. I remember Gary Oldman, whenever he finally goes off the plane and parachutes down, he dies in a really cool way. He's just like chilling in his parachute, right?
Yeah.
His
So
neck broken.
his neck gets broken as he's being parachuted off. So he's just like hanging there with a broken neck, dead, just like floating down towards
That was a
wherever.
pretty cool last shot of him, I think.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, that's kind of campy in my head, but I don't know if it feels as campy when you're watching it.
Yeah, kind of. I guess that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Like when I think back on the movie, I'm like, I mean, it's about a president that like fights terrorists on the Air Force. Well, the whole thing is just like a big stupid plot. Like, so
Yeah.
it's hard to believe that like it's not as campy as it sounds, you know?
Yeah, totally.
It feels like Gerard Butler could be in this movie.
Oh yeah, definitely now. And
If you like say it out loud, the plot.
yeah, and that's, I guess, one of the things too that was kind of refreshing about watching it is that it does feel like a Gerard Butler or Liam Neeson type thing, and I'm used to what's come out more recently because that's what I've seen, but definitely refreshing, definitely worth watching to get a taste of what could be. Not to say that there aren't movies like that come out. We reviewed Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, and I think we both even liked is Greenland, the Gerard Butler movie.
Gerard Butler, yeah, I enjoyed Greenland, all right.
Yeah, which I thought sounded like a Gerard Butler movie, but then just seemed to have a little bit more edge than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, you here with Air Force One, you have a more than capable lead actor and a very capable director. And then Gary Oldman. So, I mean, it's a winning combination. Glenn Close.
Mm-hmm.
I guess somewhere along the way, they just stopped. Like those kinds of movies just either stopped getting the budget or the talent behind them to make them work,
Yeah, I wondered if they stopped getting the budget because they wanted to make more money off of them and needed them to be PG-13 so they could sell more tickets.
I don't know. I think fantasy movies like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings kind of changed the game. Like Matrix, you know what I mean? Like I think those movies all sort of hit within like 5 years, and Hollywood has just really never been the same since.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the budget went up or something, but they just wanted it to have more mass appeal, less swearing, less violence.
Yeah.
Or
get the kids in the audience.
Yeah, so you can just sell more tickets. So I mean, I think that's pretty obviously what it is, but I'm open to being wrong about that.
Yeah. So anyways, any other thoughts about Air Force One?
No, that's it. Enjoyable movie. Glad I finally saw it. It's a
Yeah,
good
me
one to
too. I
tick off the
blows my
list.
mind that I have been friends with you for so long, and I'm sure I knew this once about you that you had not seen this movie. I'm sure you've mentioned it.
I'm sure we have, because I know that you've talked about Air Force One before, and we've talked about it, and you've talked about your memory of seeing it in that single screen movie theater, and everybody cheering at the "Get off my plane" line, and
Yeah,
you've relayed that as a story of like one of the reasons why you love going to movies.
yeah. I mean,
So we've
it's
definitely
pretty
talked about it.
badass.
Yeah. I miss those moments.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on. So speaking of movie theaters, I went and saw another film in theaters this week. I'm on a roll. That's 2 weeks in a row I've been to the movie theater.
Wow.
And yeah, and I saw A Quiet Place Part 2 or Chapter 2. I think it's Part 2.
I think it's part two. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you guys remember, or if you remember, an audience listening, we reviewed Quiet Place Part 1 on the show, or just A Quiet Place. It did not have the Part 1 on the
No.
name. But I remember we all thought it was pretty decent. Not great, but pretty decent. At least that's how I remember the review going.
Yeah. That's my recollection of how I felt about the movie.
Yeah. Well directed. I think John Krasinski, sharp eye as a director. Um, really great with kid actors and just actors in general. But one of those actors is his wife. So can we really give him a plus for that one? But
Might be
anyways,
harder. He might be, you know, so comfortable with it. It might be harder to criticize her or something if she's not giving him
maybe.
what he wants.
But she's Emily Blunt, so she's probably acting good.
Yeah, that's a safe bet.
But anyway, so then part 2 comes along, and this is a film that has been coming down the pipeline for a while now. The pandemic delayed it like a year almost.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a film, I gotta say, because of like the good, not greatness of the first one, and just how sequels, just are hit or miss anyway for horror movies. I wasn't super looking forward to A Quiet Place Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw it, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I think it's better than the first one in a lot of ways. Maybe not as fresh and unique and whatever about the first one. I think it's better directed, better written. Like this isn't too big of a spoiler for like A Quiet Place Part 1, but like there's some scenes in A Quiet Place that feel pretty on the nose. Like there's a scene where like there's a billboard with a bunch of news clippings and like things circled. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to figure it out. It's like that famous image of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where he's like trying to
Yeah.
figure out the conspiracy. It's like that. He has like that scene in the first one, and it feels sort of like, yeah, I mean, this feels like a pretty on the nose thing. Like there's none of that in the second one. I think like the suspense builds in the right way, the plot builds in a really like organic way. Cillian Murphy joins the cast, and I think he really adds a shot in the arm to this franchise that I think it needs. Yeah, it feels like a natural continuation of the first one, and also makes me like the first one more in retrospect
Oh,
because
well,
the
that's good.
story keeps going to, in my opinion, a more interesting place, because the first one is very much from the point of view of John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. The second
Mm-hmm.
one is very much the kids kind of taking over a much more important role than they had in the first one. Like they're not just objects to be saved. They are very much driving the plot forward, and I don't know. I think the kids are the secret ingredient to this movie that I think makes it work, and it just feels like a very fun, natural progression of the story. Not as scary, but I think from a world building perspective and just like where it could go next, I'm interested. I'm way more interested than I was before I saw part 2.
Nice. And I have a question, and you can just kind of yes or no this because I don't want to give anything away. But
Mm-hmm.
do they attempt to or accomplish topping the climax of the first one where she has to, give birth while those monsters around and give it super quietly, because that was like, I don't know, that's just like the perfect like disaster sort of thing, and I just wonder
Yeah.
how they top that, or even if they try.
I don't know if they try, but there are a couple sequences involving that baby that
Okay.
stressed me out quite a bit. I had anxiety, so
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
that's
I
good.
mean, it's hard to be more suspenseful than a birth in a situation like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, how do
But
they top that?
yeah, uh, I I wouldn't look at it in terms of topping the first one. It very much uses the rules the first one established and just furthers those things, right? So like
Mhm.
there is a sequence in the first one, I think near the end of Act Two, going into Act Three, where one of the main characters discovers um, how to fight back in an interesting way, right?
Mhm.
And the second one very much takes that like one thing they have and shows you that like they are going to use that if they can, you know. And I think it's
Yeah.
interesting the rules and how consistent it is. And you know, they're not reinventing the wheel, but they're giving you more of what's good, and they're giving you additional characters that help flesh out the world a little bit more. And yeah, I think it's competently shot action as well. There's a sequence at the beginning that has very hardcore Children of Men vibes. That it's like a scene in a car. You might have seen it in a trailer. It's in the trailers, but like the longer version of that shot that I'm talking about is just beautiful, beautifully filmed. So
Yeah, if I remember correctly, our review of the first one of the things we wanted was a little bit more knowledge of the world.
hmm
So it makes sense that if they're expanding on the world and giving us that sort of thing, that you would like it more, and it would make you like the first one more. So
yeah, I mean, and the part two opens with like a I don't know 15-minute flashback of like you remember how the first one there's like day 340 or whatever,
right.
you know, day 80 or whatever. Like it jumps around. Well, the second one starts on day one.
Oh,
So
okay.
you see like pre it happening, and then you know it moves into what happens, and that was it was good. You know, the
Yeah.
kids don't seem dramatically older. Like a lot of times, like kids in movies, like films like are supposed to take place like right after the other one. You know,
Hmm.
it feels like, oh yeah, they clearly waited 2 years to film a movie. The kids seem the right age. You know, I didn't notice any like dramatic jumps where they're like a foot taller or anything.
Yeah, it's not like in Arrested Development season 4 where they have a scene that takes place directly after the end of season 3,
Yeah, and then
and
Michael Sarah is
Michael Cera's like
noticeably older,
15 years older or something, 12 years
like
older.
there's at least 10.
Yeah, at least 10. But I like that moment, the sidebar that like Howard as narrator says, the events of the day clearly aged George Michael.
Yeah, aged the poor boy or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, anyways, I think it blends together really nicely, and I don't know, see it for yourself and let me know what you think. I've heard some people say that it's like not good and like it's like not as scary, and I admit it is not as scary, but I also don't super care about that if the movie is good and working in other ways, you know?
Yeah, I 100% don't care about that at all.
Yeah, like most movies don't scare me. So
Yeah.
the first one um, had some really tense moments, and this one had some really tense moments, and there you go. You know, they both
Hmm.
worked for me.
Well, good.
But that's
Happy to
all
hear
I've
it.
really got. I recommend seeing it and see it in theaters if you can. You know, it was fun seeing it with an audience. Again, I am vaccinated, so don't go sit in a movie theater without a mask if you're not vaccinated, because being a dick. But you know,
Yeah. I won't. I am vaccinated, so I can't go sitting there not vaccinated without a mask. But if I wasn't vaccinated, I wouldn't do it.
yeah, and that's the way to do it,
Hmm.
by not doing it if you're not vaccinated.
Yes.
But anyways, yeah. So that's all I've got for A Quiet Place Part Two. Any other questions, Justin? Any other thoughts?
Nope. Nothing that I think I need to know before I see it again. But you have convinced me to watch this, whereas it wasn't that high on my list but now think I might seek it out soon.
Good. Let me know what you think when you do, because I wondered when watching it. I was like, I wonder if just because you and I were pretty close about the first one, I think, and how we felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chris liked it more than either of us.
Yeah, I think that's fair and true.
So I ended up being, I mean, I don't want to build it up too much, but I ended up leaving with like a solid, like, that was good, all right. So I wondered to myself, whenever Justin finally sees this, I wonder what his opinion will be since we were so close on the first one.
Well, I will watch it and I will let you know.
Thanks.
So you don't have to wonder anymore.
Yeah. Now,
Don't want you to stay up at night. Don't want you to lose sleep,
yeah, I will no longer wonder. But now that we are done talking about A Quiet Place Part 2, let's wander into our main review.
Good one.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Come and see spine number 1035. Coming on up.
Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, they tend to be films that are older. They've been around for a while. Most people have seen them, or at least most people who seek them out and want to see them will have seen them. So we will not be doing our usual spoiler-free talk in the beginning. We're going to jump straight into spoilers. So this is your spoiler alert. If you have not seen Come and See and you want to watch it, pause the podcast right now, go watch it, and then come back and finish listening.
All right, so Come and See was directed by Elim Kilmov. It stars Alexei?
I think that's Klimov, the director, not Kilmov.
Excuse me. It stars Alexei Kravchenko and Olga Mironova.
There you go.
I am terrible with these names. I apologize. The IMDb synopsis says, after finding an old rifle, a young boy joins the Soviet resistance movement against the ruthless German forces and experiences the horrors of World War II.
So accurate.
Yeah, that is exactly what this movie is about.
This movie to a capital T.
Yeah, so I guess I chose this film.
Yes, you did.
So I suppose I should kick it off.
Yes, you should. I agree. Go for it.
Where to begin with this film? This is a movie that is crazy, heartbreaking, like a war movie, like unlike anything else. The mood and the tone of this film is so uncomfortable and bleak, but it's also just so great. Like in my opinion, one of the best war movies, at least that I've seen. Um, it's just unrelenting, I guess is a good word. I was constantly shocked that this was made in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's just so ahead of its time. I don't even know. Like the the use of Steadicam employed in this movie has got to be some of the best uses of Steadicam up to that point. Right? It's like I bet Sam Mendes like watched this movie preparing to make 1917.
Oh yeah, I had the same thought, and there are definitely other movies too that I could see like how this film imprinted upon those directors and how they carried that with them.
This movie felt like The Revenant meets 1917, but with no CGI and made decades earlier.
Yeah.
It's just an experience. I don't know what else to say. It's just an experience. Like, I wish I could have seen this on the big screen. Like, I saw it on, with like, my speakers really loud, the subwoofer turned up, and like my 65-inch TV. But man, just, I don't know. It's just an experience. And it moved me, and I don't even know what else to say about it at this point in time. I'm sure we'll get all into it, but what did you think, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that far off from you. I had not seen this film before, so this is my first time as well. I was a little nervous about watching it, to be honest, because it has this reputation of being such a brutal experience. And I would equate it a little bit to maybe the first time I was getting ready to watch Solo, right?
Yeah, I was about to say it's no Sallow, but it's also worse in some places in different ways.
Yeah, I think in some ways, like mentally thinking about it afterwards, it feels worse to me because this is all factual,
Right.
or this story may not be a 100% fact, but all of the things that happen into it were real and things that really
It's
happened.
based on a book, and the author of that book wrote about his childhood, and I don't know if it's 100% accurate, right? But
Yeah.
he also helped do the screenplay or the story.
Yeah. So in that way, it's worse. Like I can kind of watch and have a certain disconnect from like, people being forced to, eat poop and
Like, yeah, Sallow, not this movie. No one
yeah,
has to do
Solo.
that. This
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah. That stuff is created and extreme for a point. This is just real, and in that sense, it's a little more disturbing at times,
Yeah,
and a little more impactful on me.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so that said, I watched it and it was what I expected it to be, and a little bit more because this movie, as you said, is extremely well made. It's so impactful, like the way that they shoot things and the way that the soundscape gets sometimes that like
Dude, apparently they
it
used live ammunition at certain sequences, like the sequences from a distance when you see bullets whizzing through the air.
with the kid in the field,
Yeah,
like with the
they
cow.
shot
Yeah,
bullets above his head.
yeah. Was watching that and I said, this is 1985, I think 1985.
Yeah.
There's no way they're not just shooting these live ammunition bullets over his head right now.
Yeah. Insanity.
Yeah, yeah. Which is nuts and slightly distracting from a modern perspective, but kind of nuts at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
um, but everything is so impactful and everything is made both visually and from an audio standpoint to like maximize your impact as a viewer to the point where like they use so much POV and where the camera like characters are looking into the camera talking or reacting to things
Hmm.
that as a viewer you're just kind of like it's uncomfortable. It's like making eye contact with somebody if you're
Yeah.
not used to
There's
doing
no
that.
over the shoulder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no disconnect. You're in there, you're feeling this, their reactions are to you.
Mhm.
And I mean, while the movie contained what I expected, I didn't expect it to be as effective as it was, or to be shot as well as it was, and to be
Yeah.
as what I consider inventive for 1985. I could be
Oh, yeah.
wrong,
It's
um,
inventive now.
because yeah, it feels fresh now. I mean, as I said earlier, I saw the maybe like blueprints or early makings of modern films that have really impactful stuff to me. Like I got vibes of, the way that Ari Aster used like suspense in Hereditary and Midsummer. I got tones of that.
Tons of
Obviously,
Alfonso Cuarón all over the place.
Fonzo Cuarón, Children of Men,
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
it, that was
Heavy
like punching
children.
me in the face constantly with those references, or making me think about how that film references this film probably, and even thinking about my favorite section of Black Klansman, a film I don't love, but like there's no denying how powerful the last bit of that movie is,
Oh,
and
geez. Yeah.
and I assume Spike Lee has seen this film,
Yeah.
and this may be where he pulled some of that from, you know. Um, so I see. I'm sure this had an effect on Saving Private Ryan, which we talked about.
Yeah. I was thinking, I was like, man, before Saving Private Ryan existed, and even to some case, like this isn't as bloody as Saving Private Ryan, so Saving Private Ryan has that on it, but like this movie's almost just as harrowing in its own way.
Yeah,
Where
definitely.
you're just stomach, butterflies in it, you're just nervous and you're just horrified by everything happening, and you're like, God, people went through this. You know?
Mhm.
This is nuts.
Yeah, so it's impactful to me. I'm taking a long way to talk about all this, but I was just kind of in awe of what I was seeing most of the time. It's
Mhm.
about a 2.5 hour movie. I don't think it felt that long, despite I think it being pretty intentionally slow paced.
I think it's slow paced for about 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not anymore, in my opinion. And then it's just like I lived for the brief respite he had in between sequences sometimes. Like
Oh yeah,
basically once the bombs drop, I don't think the movie slows down too much.
no, and just watching his character go through this journey. I mean, I kind of got vibes too of like Jojo Rabbit, of this kid who just kind of, it seemed like he almost glamorized war in the beginning and was like really excited to go off to it.
Right. Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, he is at the very first scene of the movie, he's like trying to find a dead body with a gun so that he can go do this thing. So like I don't know if it's like patriotism or he was peer pressured into it or if it was just him thinking he's just going to go save the world. I don't know, who knows what he was thinking at the time, but
Yeah. Well,
I,
what's interesting about this movie, what's so different to me is we start with that, right? And we'll take Jojo Rabbit as an example, but the kid is excited about being a Nazi, right?
yeah,
And in this one, the kid is excited about fighting Nazis, and that's generally a good thing, right? Like
sure,
especially in a lot of like war movies,
yeah,
we follow these characters who are excited about Nazis, and at some point we get to see him fight Nazis and do it. And this kid is excited for the right reasons in a way, and then
right, yeah,
just
it's
gets
all
shit on for
noble.
2 hours.
Yeah, it's all noble, but it's just one of those like, I mean, for God's sakes, the conditions that this army, like, first of all, where they're at, what is it, Belarusia?
Yeah.
Um, in 1943, these villages are so poor. Like for these villages, it might as well be 1843.
Yeah.
Like
For
they're
sure.
shacks, they have hay, and like there's no, you know what I mean? Like it's just like they are so disconnected from everything going on. And then, this they have to find guns off dead men just to join the army, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they're sitting there going up against like the Nazis, like a well-oiled machine at that point in time. And
Yeah.
yeah, so just the conditions to which this village and these poor soldiers are trying to, scrape by and just resist for a little bit is awful. Like it's so bad that he just joins the army and then has to give up his boots and stay behind so an older dude can have boots. That's how poor everyone is.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like these people probably just struggled to survive, let alone struggled to survive in the midst of Nazi occupation.
Yeah, in the midst of like a fascist regime taking over your country. Yeah. It's
Oof.
um it's crazy, right? And you know, I guess one of the craziest things about this movie is some of the imagery and the tone that it depicts. Like whenever they have that skull dressed in like the skeleton dressed in like the Nazi coat, and then they
Yeah.
start putting clay over the skull.
Mm-hmm.
That imagery was crazy and horrifying.
Yeah. It's
With like the
grotesque.
makeshift Hitler.
Yeah. Yeah. It's grotesque and it's creepy and like some of that, and is where I was picking up on things that Ari Aster was doing in Midsummer tonally,
Yeah.
and especially the shots of like going through that crowd of people and everybody staring into the camera as the camera is steady cam like tracking through like this little path.
Yeah.
This, I mean, it's almost like a horror movie,
I mean, it
or
it might
maybe
as well be the
take
way some of
almost out of
it's
that
filmed.
sentence.
Some of the sequences are just truly like the it's not even the content in them, because I've seen this kind of content in other movies, right? But
Yeah.
the way it's delivered in this particular film is just maybe ahead of its time. Is I just kept being taken aback by how ahead of its time it was. I don't know. But like the sequence whenever, the bombs drop and he loses his hearing and his hearing's all messed up for a while,
Yeah.
and then the sequence where they arrive to his village because him and the nurse are like running away and he's like, we
Oh
can
yeah.
stay with my family. And there's flies all over the house and you're just like, what? Where are they? Where the village is empty, so something's going on, right? And
Yeah.
then that whole sequence where like she looks over her shoulder and sees like the entire town
Yeah.
just like
As they're
behind his
running.
house.
Yeah. As they're running, and then we get that reverse shot looking
Yeah.
back, and you
Yeah. And
see
that
that they
shot
were
is just
all.
like it's moving and it's just so quick and horrifying.
Mm-hmm. And the way that we build to that moment is incredible too, because the fly noise, you hear the fly noise, like the fly buzzing
Yeah.
start to come in before we see the flies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just cinema language, we understand, I think inherently, at least I did, that flies buzzing equals something is rotting or dead. This is not good. It's ominous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we knew everyone had to be dead, right? But
Yeah.
the manner in which it's like revealed, I guess, is I just
Yeah.
wasn't ready for that. It was just I don't know, the idea of just them all shoved up behind a house like that.
Yeah. Just unceremoniously dumped, piled up.
Yep. Just
It's
kind of out of sight, out of mind behind that house. That's all. Let's move on.
Yeah, and it's definitely, it's not surprising, but you're waiting for the reveal. When is it coming? And it takes such a long time, I think, from the time that he shows up and you're hearing those fly noises, and you know before he knows, and you're
And
just
I think
waiting.
he knows. He just doesn't want to admit that he knows.
Yeah, probably. There's still some optimism left in him, or
Right.
maybe it's silly optimism, or like unrealistic optimism and
Or
denial.
because if he doesn't
But
find him, if he doesn't look at it, it's not real, right? You better run away to someone like, let's go to the bog real quick.
yeah. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about just these moments of, I don't know if I want to call them optimism, but they keep getting to this moment where he shares a laugh with somebody, and it's almost like that laugh is a cue for like the world to come crap on him again
Right.
and
Yeah.
do something, because every time he starts to relax just a little bit, because there's moments that he and the girl laugh together, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I
After
think
he was
that's
left
right before
behind.
the bombs go off,
Right.
and he's kind of laughing when he's in the house just before they have to run. And
And then whenever they get the cow for a minute, they're like, they think things are coming up their way.
he's getting some milk from it, and he's like, all right, we successfully sold this cow, we can go back, we can feed our people, blah blah blah.
Yeah. They're like, what a life.
And then the director of the film fires live ammo over his head.
Yeah. And I'm sure killed a real cow.
Yeah, I think that happened, which was sad.
Yeah. And
That's
that
the
cow's
thing.
eye, that shot of that cow's eye,
Yeah.
you remember when it's like twitching side to side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made me think of like things like Unchin Andalou.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, man, I wouldn't be surprised if in this movie they do some Unchin Andalou style gross out, but I wouldn't know
Yeah.
reason why.
Yeah, and,
Why they
and
would.
they don't go that surreal, but there is a surreal quality to this film that I think makes it all the more effective. And part of that is the amount of POV, and breaking the fourth wall in a well, maybe they don't literally break the fourth wall, but I feel like they're looking at me so many times in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the constantly moving camera kind of gives it this unrelenting feel as well.
These sort of like uninterrupted takes of things, and tracking shots, and like the way that we receive his reactions. And they tend to be these close-up shots of him basically staring into camera, and that feels very like old school surrealist to me, like silent surreal film to me, or even makes me think of things like the Great Train Robbery, and that ending shot of that with the guy firing the gun into the camera. Um, all of these, maybe it's just reminding me of those like early silent like horror type films and surreal films that like maybe that's why I feel like this film has so much surreal tone to it. But
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
I definitely think it does. I think if not surreal, then certainly unease.
Yeah.
Like the film does not want you to get comfortable, I don't think. I'll tell you when I realized, I realized before, but like whenever I was watching the film and I just thought to myself, this is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when he's gonna steal the cart and the horse, and the dude's basically, instead of getting mad at him or whatever, he's like, come, you'll be my son. I'm taking you to the village, and they try to apply like a quick backstory.
Yeah.
And then they get to the village, right? And the Nazis are arriving at the village. Like you can see through the fog, people approaching, like bodies, like silhouettes of bodies just approaching.
Yeah.
And it's timed and framed so well, and that camera's moving with these really long tracking shots while their people are running, and they're keeping everything that needs to be in focus. And just constantly, multiple times throughout that sequence, you see just stuff in the fog approaching the village in the distance as they're scurrying to find where they're going to be when everyone arrives. And that imagery, pre-CGI, like nowadays they would just throw some fake CGI fog up there, right? And then
Yeah. CGI
just kind of,
people in the
yeah,
distance, like
whatever.
silhouettes.
Right, but they actually got all these extras and these vehicles just the right distance away to where you could still see them, in just the most effective way possible. And that whole sequence was just filmed. It's insanity that it was just filmed how well it was, I guess. In the
Yeah.
80s, 1985. It just blows my mind that that sequence exists. And it's just so terrifying as you see these like forces and you can hear them in the distance, like approaching this village, knowing that no good can come of it once they get there. Um, I don't know, just the imagery there on screen is it's very powerful in my opinion.
Yeah, it's beautiful and it's really well staged and it's impressive, and I think that's one of those things where I really feel the magic of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Thinking about it being done at the time without CG, without special like computerized special effects,
Right.
without digital cameras.
Yeah.
Thinking about it being on film too.
Yeah. Just having to get it right, getting the light right, the f-stop right.
Yeah, and the soundscape too, like the way that they use sound, because there's times in this movie where they implore, non-diegetic music, like soundtrack music. Um, that's sort of like weird, like soundscapes and classical sort of stuff, but they also know when to not include that. And I think the whole sequence of piling people into the building and then burning it, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, is scoreless. It's just the audio of people yelling, people screaming, the fire, wood crackling stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the sounds
The
of people
laughing
like
of the
beating.
soldiers.
Yeah. And that whole section, he doesn't use any of the stuff that he's done earlier to put us in that headspace, because there's a lot of like cacophony, with like the sound and like weird noises and stuff, war noises and stuff. And this one, he does it all with just sound and no music. And I mean that's really impressive to me. And I like when directors know when to use sound for effect and when to not.
Yeah. I mean, this film already had a pretty sharp sound sound mixing, sound, I don't know what you call it, sound editing, just through the sequence whenever the bombs dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And, you get that effect, which we've seen in a million movies since this movie, but where, he loses his hearing. in a weird way, and like the sound actually changes from like how he hears it for a minute. And you know, maybe I'm sure that technique had been done prior to this movie, but it's still effective here, even having seen it numerous times in countless films. That technique of, oh, I'm deaf now and there's a ringing in my ears, like that's not a new effect, but here it's still effective, I think.
Yeah, I think that's like the greatest compliment that we can give this movie is that we've seen so much of this content before in other movies that have come since. I think arguably even movies that have come before it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But to watch a film that contains so much that you've seen before and to have it feel so fresh and so innovative.
Right. Well, to film it with such, I don't want to say love, but to film it with such inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Inspiration and knowing what will affect you as an audience. Because I will say too that there have been other movies dealing with the same World War II, horrors of World War II sort of stuff before that, and I think they haven't affected me as much as this movie did.
Yeah.
I really started thinking about a lot of these things and was moved more than a lot of other films.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is, I think what this film has in common with 1917 is that, we have a point of view character. We have more knowledge than our main character does in a lot of cases. In fact, pretty much in every case, probably, because we know how World War II played out and what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But just to see his innocence, right? And like his will to live and just navigating through this hellscape that is his homeland, right? As these invaders are coming through. It's just, I don't know, like the vehicle, the lens through which this story is told is just so effective, I guess, that, it keeps it fresh even all these years later, because most films just don't have this sort of grounded oomph to them, and talk about a lot of the films that you and I particularly love, employ a lot of this kind of technique, and they still stand out, like Children of Men. The last 20 minutes of Children of Men is all over this movie.
Yeah.
Or this movie is all over that movie, I should say.
Yeah.
And that movie in Children of Men is still more effective than most films, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you employ this technique, this point of view, follow with Steadicam through the horrors of what's going on, man, it can be a really effective tool that filmmakers have to get horrors like this across,
Yeah, which is another Ari Aster moment, thinking about the Steadicam shots, because I was thinking about that shot towards the end of like the cold opening of Midsummer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you know what I'm talking about with like the I don't know if I guess I can spoiler Midsummer because it's been out for a couple of years now, but spoiler alert for that is just, or at least for the cold open of that movie,
with their family,
and they're all dead.
Yeah.
And like, if I remember correctly, that's like a big tracking shot.
Yeah, it goes through the house in like a really disturbing way.
Yeah. So I started thinking about that and how the blueprint of that might have come from this film or films that were inspired by this film. And I have a question for you though. Like, speaking of the lens that we see this movie through, which first off, Alexei Kravchenko as Flora. I mean, what a performance! Like, is this the best like child performance that you've ever seen?
I mean, it has to be up there, man, because this kid just goes for it, right? And I was actually reading trivia on IMDb about this film, and the director was concerned about putting an actor so young in the sequences and having him just have to go through this story, and because this story is about some pretty heavy stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently, they tried to like hypnotize the kid to where he wouldn't remember a lot of what they were filming.
My gosh.
But he wasn't susceptible to hypnosis, so they had to just make him go through the whole thing fully aware, which I would assume they were doing anyway. But it's interesting to note that they were even while making it aware of. I mean, this actor's pretty young, and this film is pretty rough.
Yeah, and I mean that probably adds to the performance, because it's really good. I mean,
It
there's
is.
no hiding a performance when the actor's face is like right there, close to the lens, looking down the camera
Yeah.
lens.
Yeah.
Like you can't hide.
For 2.5 hours almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's incredible in it. And
Yeah.
my real question, though, the one that I started off intending to ask is, how do you feel about the scene in the building just before they set it on fire when they tell people, leave the children and you will let you live, and he climbs out. Do you have any judgment on him as a character for that? Is he too young? What do you think?
Um, I don't super have judgment here. Like, he didn't know those people.
Yeah.
I mean, he just lost his whole family.
Mm-hmm. He's a
So
he's a
I don't
kid.
know. He's a kid. It's like I'm sure 20 years later, 10 years later, he probably wished he would have stayed, just died. Maybe, you
Probably.
know. Um, I think it's something that he will probably wrestle with the rest of his life. Did he do the right thing? Could he have done more? Should he have done less? Did he, or is him being a stranger in this town full of people that were, you know, going to protect him, is just leaving them in there? Doesn't really change anyone's fate. They were going to die anyway. I don't know. That's a hard question, right?
Yeah, I guess I kind of felt that, and maybe there's just like an inherent natural reaction to seeing this like sort of scenes before, or thinking, if an adult man were to leave right now, I think we
Yeah.
would not like that character. It's like Billy
Right. Like,
Zane on Titanic, right?
yeah, I was gonna say like total Billy Zane and Titanic vibes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
And you took the words right out of my mouth. I had
I
just watched
apologize.
Titanic the other day too.
Oh yeah.
Like when he
That's
grabs the kid, he's like, "Please, I'm all she's got in the world."
Yeah.
And you're fuck you, Billy
Terrible
Zane,
person.
in this movie.
Yeah. So I got vibes of that, I guess, just they're expecting that. But I'm like, oh, he's a kid. I actually didn't expect them to let him out because they're like, you're a kid. Get back in there, dum dum.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to come through at this all at the end, right? But
No. But
but
that's,
I'm glad he did because the end it works for me.
yeah. And I definitely want to talk about that. But that's one of the things that makes it so horrific, is that this character has seen this all and he has changed forever, probably for the worse. And
Yeah.
he's going
Yeah.
to live with these memories. And that really packs a punch more than if he had died in the end, just been shot or something. I
Yeah,
think that would have
totally.
not been
And
satisfying.
right, yeah, totally. And also, before we move on too much further, I wanted to ask you that scene whenever he gets taken to the after the bog, when he gets taken to like that camp where the surviving villagers are all like chilling,
Mm-hmm.
and the village elder dude, like the chief or mayor or whatever he was of the village, he's all burned, and he's like, "I told you not to dig.
Oh yeah,
Like, I told you not to get the gun. You brought this down on us or whatever." I think that's a little unfair. Like,
yeah.
I mean, is that true? I feel like the paratroopers were going to land nearby anyway.
Oh
I don't see how
yeah,
him joining the cause and digging up the gun doomed anyone directly.
yeah. I mean, there's an inevitability of a you know regime marching through your country that they're going to come to you eventually.
Right. The only thing I could think of that would have made it his fault would be like, remember at the beginning when he is digging up the gun, that plane flies overhead?
Yeah, and they see
I'm
him.
wondering if like the plane says like, "Oh, there's hostiles in this area,"
Yeah, that's
and then
possible.
decided to land the paratroopers there specifically. That's the only way that I would think that it would be any amount of this poor. What's his name? Flor. How do you say it?
Flora,
Flora.
Fleora.
Flora. Flora. I don't know.
Yeah,
But this poor boy doesn't need that guilt on his conscience. I just don't see how it's his fault because the Germans were invading anyway.
yeah. That's fair. And it's pretty. crappy move, but
I'd have been like, "Fuck you,
yeah.
buddy."
Yeah. And I guess it's like we talked earlier about the villagers being poor and the army being underfunded and in like poor conditions.
I mean, it's just like a
Is
militia,
it?
basically.
Yeah, is this like you can join up if you have a gun because we don't have a gun to give you?
Hmm.
That's why he gets in, right?
That's kind of the vibe I got.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not sure they explicitly explained that, but that was kind of how I interpreted it,
Hmm.
which is crazy. That you have to fight an army like the Nazi army, the Germans, with all of their power without a real army. It's just like, bring what you got.
Yeah. You know, I was actually reading in that same trivia thing. Apparently, in this film and in real life, German troopers, whenever do it, like invading this area, used Russian weapons because they perform better in the cold.
Oh, wow. Okay. Smart.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you have anything else before we kind of talk about the end?
Well, there's two sequences in the end I want to be sure and talk about when he shoots the painting and then
Yeah.
the final shots of the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
So when he starts shooting the Hitler painting and all the World War II Hitler clips start playing backwards all the way till like Hitler's a baby with his mom.
Yeah.
What'd you make of that?
I mean, it kind of felt like a visual representation of the thing that people always say about Hitler. It was like, if you could go back and kill Hitler as a baby and stop all of this, would
Yeah.
you? Or
Right.
maybe people, you fantasize about it. I guess there's probably not a question asked in this movie of would you do it or not. It's just that's the fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking exactly. I was just very cognizant of all the damage that this one man is arguably responsible for everything. I mean, the country was already in a pretty bad way anyway before Hitler, but Hitler is, he's the guy we blame, right?
Yeah,
He did some horrible things and had some awful ideas. um,
for sure.
so the idea that everything starts playing backwards all the way till where even he was just like innocent baby once, just like almost like our main character was 2 days earlier, and compared to where he is now, like at one point we're all innocent, and all this horrible violence and terrible things we do to one another, we all come from a very similar place, and then somewhere along the way, ugliness creeps in. That's kind of what I was thinking about during that
Yeah.
sequence.
No, I mean, I think that's it because he stops shooting and he hesitates.
Once he
And
starts imagining the
once,
baby.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's when he ends just like his relentless shooting. So, I mean, I think that's spot on is just, you know, before this movie started, at the beginning of this movie, he was pretty innocent, our
Yeah,
main
I mean, he
character.
lived in a village that probably doesn't have any radio or mail service, so I can't imagine he was too in the know.
Yeah. That whole sequence just works twofold, right? Of giving us the real footage in black and white
Yeah.
and seeing all of that. Like it gives us the exactly what we're talking about in terms of the deeper meaning and the similarity between Hitler and other innocent people before they get corrupted.
Hmm.
And then just being super impactful, just like the ending of Black Klansman that we talked about earlier, just intercutting like that real footage of like, yes, this is a movie, what you've been watching as actors on a screen, but by the way,
Yeah.
this is real.
Yeah.
This
Here's
is
pictures of dead bodies, and then the
it's
people that made
tragic.
that happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, that footage, I'm sure I've seen some of it before. It's always impactful, and
Yeah. Every time you see like the skinniness and like the skeletal features of these people.
yeah, it's never not shocking.
No, it isn't. It's just like, how, oh my God, like people walking around that skinny and underfed and malnourished. It's awful.
Yeah,
It's
it made
just,
me
yeah,
want to.
it's never fun to look at. It's always, even in this movie, you would think like, okay, yeah, it's gonna close with a bunch of footage I've seen before, but even still, like the way it's used, the reverse playing of that footage,
Yeah,
intercut with our main characters, whose name I still don't know how to pronounce, like his
Flora. I just say flora, like flora and fauna,
Flora,
and I will call
but
it
the
that.
Y comes before the O.
I know, but sometimes letters
Neil.
are in names that don't get pronounced.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes letters don't mean things.
It's true.
Um,
But
anyways, but yeah, no, it's just the intercut between all of that and his emotional state. Just it worked for me.
yeah, yeah. Intercut, it definitely takes on a different meaning. Like the Kuleshov, not Kuleshov. That's not the right. The Russian editing thing. I'm blanking on the name. Eisenstein editing.
Yes.
Like the A plus B equals C, right? Like
Right.
him shooting the picture frame plus this footage we've seen before, it makes it take on a different meaning, right? But also we have, or at least I have not seen this footage played in reverse before, which is
Yeah, me neither.
a different thing. Like I mean, that sounds kind of obvious, right? That like, oh yeah, I've not seen it played in reverse, so therefore it's different. But I think it just makes you take it in a little bit fresher, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, because it starts making you think about it in the way that, at least for me, the way that I just described moments ago, right? About how the sequence in which the clips are playing in reverse, the sequential order of them, ending where they do, and you're just like, that's the first time I've ever thought to myself, like, oh yeah, Hitler was a baby once.
Yeah.
I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, it is weird to pull that away from the movie, I think, or have the movie guide you there in a way.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I guess it all just boils down to like, before war and politics and the world, everything, just we all start out so innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So the final sequence, right? The other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to mention were the final sequence where he's marching, and he basically goes from our audience surrogate and then sort of just disappears into this crowd of soldiers toward the point to where we can no longer even differentiate him or even see him anymore. He's just a cog in a machine at that point,
Yeah, it's the bicycle thieves ending.
Yep. Exactly.
Which is
And it
one
works.
of the reasons I love that movie. That ending of just our main character is everybody is going through this experience and that sort of thing. And yeah, I the same thing happens at the end of this movie, and I felt the same way of yes, we saw this one person's journey, but he is one person of millions that had similar experiences,
right.
and
So just
millions more
imagine
that
a whole generation of just scarred human beings that
yeah
went through hell, for lack of a better word, right? Just absolute hell.
Yeah, it's like taking this one experience and then like now pull out and imagine all of these people are this person and like multiply this tragedy times
right
millions.
like all at once, he's nobody, he's everybody, and he's you.
Yes, exactly. Well put.
Yeah, but
And go ahead.
cool. No, that's it. You go on.
Okay. Well, I think too, it's worth talking about just before that, the scene where they have the Nazis captured.
Oh yeah.
Which I found really, really interesting. And I mean, I don't know how much pleasure we're supposed to arrive at in seeing the Nazis themselves be cowards, or at least some of them be cowards and
yeah, dude.
sort of,
one of them straight up wasn't a coward at all. He was gonna double down on being a dick.
yeah, that's true. But I did get the sense almost that there's one guy who runs in as they're getting ready to destroy them or whatever, and I think they're maybe even getting ready to burn them or something like that. And then the one guy runs in and he's like, have you not forgotten what these people have done? And I guess I wasn't certain if he was referring to like, have you forgotten how horrible these people were? Let's like mutilate them or something. Or if he was kind of saying the opposite of like, have you not forgotten what these people have done and we're about to like do the same to them?
Yeah, because I think that's it. Because that's what I took. Because they're getting ready to burn these people alive.
Yeah.
And then they get a much more merciful end than burning alive.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone could tell you that they deserved what they got or that they didn't deserve worse.
Hmm.
but also if you eye for an eye, we're all blind, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Um, are they any better? And is that what we're supposed to pull away from the end in that sequence, right? Because that's what I did, but I don't know necessarily that that's the intention, right? Because it could be the dude just couldn't contain his anger for a second longer and just needed to pull the trigger. I don't know, but
Yeah, I
I
think
look
it's
at it as a more merciful end than they deserved.
yeah, I agree that it's more merciful. I do think it comes out of I can't stand to look at these people any longer and listen to them talk. That's the vibe I got when the
Yeah,
triggers
but
are finally pulled, and then one
if
person
if that's
shoots,
the
and
rage you're coming from, I think I could have contained my rage a little bit, like 30 more seconds to see these people burn and scream to death.
yeah, maybe so, maybe so. But I don't know if that's what you're supposed to pull away. I definitely thought about it. Of you know, is this going to come down to like a revenge ending? you know,
Right.
and the people who made this film, I guarantee, are coming from a much angrier place about all of this than I am.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think if it was just purely revenge, they would have burned.
Yeah, I
So
think they want more out
I
of it.
think it sets up the revenge and then sort of robs us of it.
Hmm. Yeah, how would you have felt if they had burned them alive? Would you have felt a little bit like walking away with like, yep, like violence begets more violence?
I mean,
Um,
I guess what else can you?
yeah,
What
well,
else can you take away from such a thing? Like hurt people, I don't know.
yeah, and that feels wrong to me. I think,
That feels too simple.
yeah, it's complex, and I mean, it's a complex movie, despite its simplistic IMDb synopsis that we commented on earlier.
Yeah. And that's what's so good about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. I
Yeah, I
mean,
did too.
enjoyed it as much as you can. Like, it's also one of those movies that I'm watching it and I'm like, this is pretty incredible, and it's amazing. But I don't know when I'll watch this again.
Yeah. I think I definitely would like to add it to my personal Criterion collection. I think it's worth supporting, it's worth buying
Mhm.
just to show someone one day maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and man, this should be a film that people watch. Like, I
I
think it
agree.
was kind of not very easily available before Criterion released it. I don't know if that's correct or not, but
Yeah.
I didn't see it too many places. I know a lot of people were really begging for a proper release
Yeah,
before
I've heard of it
Criterion.
for years, right? Like Roger
Yeah.
Ebert had it in his great movies list. Um,
Hmm.
it's been referenced several times, but despite that, I've been to a lot of movie stores in my day, buying a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays, and I don't think I've ever knowingly come across it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And so I'm very glad that it has a nice release. I think I was looking and um, it is like a 2K scan of it.
Oh,
And so maybe one day we'll get a 4K scan and an even nicer version of it.
knock on wood.
Because I mean, I think that would be amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah. This movie looking even better would be okay by me.
Yeah, but I think it's good to have. It's like, some people show Saving Private Ryan or Schindler's List, or those films, and like I think this movie belongs right up there in that conversation of like, if you want to educate somebody.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Here's where I both like and dislike comparing this thing to something like Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan because those are both Spielberg, and Spielberg comes at things from a very wholesome perspective, even when trying to display the horror. He's an optimist,
Yeah.
I think, Spielberg.
Mm-hmm. He
And both
finds
of
the
these
good.
movies have sort of movie plot contrivances, especially Saving Private Ryan, because it's a fictional movie, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like it's got the intro and the outro with the Matt Damon as an older man and crying and being like, make it count, live my life. Like it kind of tells you what to feel and holds your hand through that process. Still a wonderful movie, and I love that movie.
Yeah.
But this movie, there's nothing contrived about it. It's just bare bones. Here's the horrors. There's no live it right, make it count.
Yeah.
What does it all mean? Questions. And, there's no Tom Hanks making us tear up because he's good at that. This is just horror.
Yeah. So I am more likely to cry and shed a tear during Saving Private Ryan or Schindler's List. I did not come close to tears in this movie.
No, me
because
neither.
that's not what it's doing.
Right.
So
And I think
really
that's a very important distinction to make, even though I agree with you that this movie belongs in the pantheon of like great war movies that you should show people to show them war,
war in World War II, the Nazis, that sort of thing. Maybe a better film to compare with would be like Life is Beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Maybe those are a little closer in terms of feeling, although there is a lot of pleasantness in Life is Beautiful.
Yeah, the first half.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's an important film to me. Like I can't imagine somebody talking about war films or World War II films even, and me not bringing this film up.
Yeah. For the rest of my life, this will be like in my first to recommend war films.
Yep, exactly. So, would you say you loved this film? Do you want to rate it out of 5?
Yeah, I would. I'm going straight up 5 stars. I thought I could not have enjoyed this more, even though I didn't have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. From a craft perspective, I loved it. I loved being challenged by this film like I was. Yes, I was uncomfortable. There's parts how do you enjoy this? But I think I saw somebody in one of the Criterion Facebook groups talking about the Underground Railroad series that just came out, and they were like, I'm looking forward to feeling uncomfortable because I should feel uncomfortable when I watch this.
Yeah.
So I should feel uncomfortable watching Come and See, and I was, and made more uncomfortable than I ever anticipated being just by the way this film was crafted. So in that sense, I got exactly what I wanted and was, enjoyed it in that sense. And I'm with you, 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
There.
Yeah. I wish Chris had been on this episode. I would have liked to hear his thoughts on this movie.
Yeah. He probably would have hated it. And been
1 star.
Points of dissent. Yeah, we would 1-starred it. That's not true at all. I do not think he would have.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Felt that way. I think he'd be right there with us, to be honest.
Oh, I saw on Letterboxd, though, I'm just going to spill someone else's 5-star rating for this film. Jake Wagner Russell, who creates our intro and outro music, has this sitting at a 5 stars right now.
Oh, good. And I'm happy that someone else has seen this movie, too.
Yeah.
Like someone else we know. So if I want to talk to somebody else about it that's not you, I can hit up Jake.
Yeah. You got someone in your back pocket.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have anything else on this movie, or should we move on to our poll for the next Criterion film we do?
I am done. Let's move on.
Okay, cool. So the poll this week for our next Criterion episode, the theme that we chose for it is summer, because we are approaching summer and it's getting warm outside. So, interpret that how you will. I don't know what summer means to you, Mike, but you can explain that and pick your choice right now if you want.
Yeah, so for summer, I am actually going to choose a film that I have seen before, but not in quite some time. And it used to be one of my favorite films. And I don't know why this screams summer. Maybe because whenever I bought the box set, it was summertime. I don't know.
Makes sense.
But I'm going with 5 Easy Pieces, starring Jack Nicholson.
Oh, wow. That is not what I thought you were going to say, but I'm very happy that you chose it because I've been wanting to rewatch this film for a while.
Yeah. And I remember this being my favorite Jack Nicholson performance that I've seen. So I'm excited to go back and see how it holds up now. But I remember a lot of the landscape shots reminding me of warm summer days and hot summer days, because he works in oil fields and.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, you saw this film through the BBS Lost in America Criterion box set. And
well, I'd seen it previously, but I got really
Okay.
excited whenever that box set started being released and what was in it, because I loved Five Easy Pieces.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But so much in that box set, and maybe it's just like 70s movies in general just have like a summery vibe to me, not in like always in like a pleasant, happy, vacation-y, summery sense, but I don't know. A lot of the films just seem like kind of hot and sweaty and gritty.
Like Easy Rider?
Yeah. So I'm with you. I buy into the summer on this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
You'll allow it.
I'll allow it.
All right. Well,
right.
what do you got for summer?
Yeah. So for summer, after the experience that Come and See was, I think I need something a little lighter, a little more comical. And I'm going to go with one of my favorite films of all time, which it almost made it onto my top 10 list when we did those episodes a while back during quarantine. But it was in my honorable mentions, but not quite cracked the top 10. But that is Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Slapstick movie, lots of great sight gags and jokes. And it's about a little small vacation town and all of the different characters in it with our somewhat main character being Monsieur Hulot, but everybody in the film is like pretty memorable. All these little side characters that are reoccurring throughout this, but it's pretty plotless. It's just a lot of funny bits and good times and pleasant feelings, pleasant soundtrack. I really, 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 really love this movie, so I want to revisit it.
Yeah, I would be completely down with that. So, yeah, may the best one win.
Yeah, I will not be upset about having to watch either of these, though. But yeah, just to recap, check out our Twitter now. Check the show notes. We will have a link to the poll in the show notes. But Mike's choice was Five Easy Pieces, and my choice was Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
All right. Okay, and then I guess with that, we're done, right? We're done?
We are done, yes. Thank you so much, listener, for listening. Thank you, Mike, for talking about Come and See with me. I'm going to say right now, we're having technical difficulties towards the end of this episode, and so I'm going to apologize again, even though I'll probably add a little disclaimer that Mike's audio quality might not be as good as normal.
Yeah. In the last 3 minutes of our recording, my program crashed, and I was not able to be recovered. So
we lost the whole recording after about an hour and 20 minutes or so in. So
yeah.
Bummer.
But luckily, we have a backup.
Yeah, we have a backup. But yes, so thanks, Mike, for talking to me. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, as always, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so on soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right, everyone. Have a good one.
What's our next episode, though, Mike?
Oh, crap. See, my technical issue just completely threw me off of everything. Our next episode is either going to be this Criterion thing that we just talked about, or it might be Cruella. We haven't really decided yet.
Yeah, if you have a preference, send it in, and we may listen to you.
We might. That's true. I've already seen Cruella, so for me, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm watching it tonight, so I will have seen it either way. So,
all right. Well, enjoy yourself. I will not tell you my thoughts on Cruella, but you should text me.
Yeah, I'll text you tonight after I'm done, and then we'll talk about it next week, probably at least the news on the March. If not, give a full-fledged review of it. How does that sound? Sounds
good.
All right. Well, I will talk to you then.
All right, everyone. Goodbye for real this time.
Bye-bye.